Millionaire rescues baby. From street 5 years later, a taxi driver exposes everything. It was a freezing winter night in downtown Chicago, and the streets shimmered with icy rain that fell in thin, slicing sheets. The city was unusually quiet, except for the hum of traffic far in the distance and the occasional splash of water beneath speeding tires. Ethan Cole, a billionaire businessman known for his ruthlessness in the boardroom, sat in the back seat of his sleek black SUV, reviewing quarterly earnings on his tablet. The digital glow reflected off his tired face, casting sharp shadows that hinted at long nights and buried emotions. His driver waited patiently in the front, unmoving, the car idling near a dark alleyway. Ethan's world was about numbers, results, and clean exits. No room for distractions. But then, faintly, a sound broke through the silence, high and desperate. At first, Ethan ignored it, assuming it was a stray cat or the wind howling through broken vents. But it came again, sharper, quicker, undeniably human. A baby's cry. He raised his eyes, frowning slightly, trying to focus back on his report, but something tugged at him, not from the screen, but deep inside. He put the tablet down and leaned forward. "Stop the car," he said firmly. His driver looked into the rearview mirror, confused. "Sir?" Ethan didn't repeat himself. He opened the door and stepped out into the rain, the cold air cutting through his tailored wool coat. His leather shoes splashed into the wet pavement as he walked toward the alley. The city lights faded behind him as he moved further into shadow. The crying grew louder, more frantic. He turned a corner and spotted a soggy cardboard box tucked behind a dumpster, half covered with a piece of torn newspaper. Ethan crouched slowly. His heart, normally steady and unbothered, began to race. Inside the box, barely visible under a soaked well, was a tiny baby girl. Her skin was pale, her cheeks flushed red from the cold, her lips trembling. She couldn't be more than a few weeks old. Her little hands reached out blindly, shaking. Rain poured down harder now, soaking Ethan's shoulders and fogging his glasses. But he didn't move. He dropped to both knees, removed his scarf, and carefully wrapped it around her. She whimpered softly as his hands touched her, as if recognizing safety in his warmth. "You're okay," he whispered, voice rough from disbelief. "You're safe now." Pulling out his phone, he called 911 with urgency he hadn't felt in years. "I found a baby," he said, glancing back at her fragile body. "She's freezing. Please send help." The dispatcher asked questions, but Ethan's focus was on her, not the call. Minutes later, sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights painted the wet pavement as paramedics rushed in. Ethan didn't hand her over immediately. He hesitated, holding her close for a moment longer, before allowing the medics to take her gently. "She was just there," he murmured, watching them work. At the hospital, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as doctors examined the child. One nurse took Ethan aside. "She's cold and malnourished but stable. No ID, no sign of a parent, nothing." Ethan stood behind the glass of the neonatal room, arms crossed, face unreadable. But inside, he felt the walls cracking. Memories of his childhood flooded him, of the sister he'd once loved dearly, whose name was Lily. She died in a house fire when Ethan was only 12. He had never spoken about it, never mourned publicly. He had buried it beneath ambition, success, and skyscrapers. But tonight, in this fragile, abandoned baby, something familiar stirred. That night, he didn't leave the hospital. He sat in the corner of her room, silent and still. Nurses came in and out, offering coffee, updates, but he hardly noticed. He just watched her, the way her tiny chest rose and fell, the way her lips sucked slightly in her sleep. At dawn, a social worker arrived with paperwork, talking about procedures, temporary care, the foster system. Ethan listened, then stood up. "What if I keep her?" The woman blinked. "Sir, you mean foster care?" "No, I want to adopt her, permanently." There was silence in the room as the weight of his words settled in. "I'll cover everything. I'll make it legal. Just Don't take her away from me." The baby stirred as if she had heard him. And in that moment, Ethan felt something unfamiliar: hope. He named her Lily, after the sister who had once made his world bright. As he signed the first forms, his voice trembled slightly. "You're not alone anymore." And though the city still raged outside and life still demanded his time, everything for Ethan Cole had changed the moment he heard a cry in the cold. The city looked different as Ethan drove home that morning, the baby carrier nestled beside him in the back seat. The streets were still wet with rain, but something inside him had shifted. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about meetings, mergers, or money. He was thinking about how to hold a bottle, how to change diapers, and whether the crib he'd ordered hours ago would arrive by the afternoon. His penthouse, once cold, modern, and perfectly silent, wasn't ready for a child, not even close. But Ethan didn't care. He didn't hire a full-time nanny or pass her off to assistants like other CEOs might. Instead, he cleared his schedule, cancelled appearances, and dove headfirst into fatherhood with the same intensity he'd once used to build his empire. The first few nights were chaos. Lily would cry in the middle of the night, her small voice echoing through marble walls. Ethan, still learning, stumbled through bottle warmers and lullabies, but slowly they settled into rhythm. He read parenting books between feedings, memorized lullabies while pacing across imported rugs, and learned how to swaddle with precision. The penthouse transformed day by day: baby blankets over Italian leather, tiny socks on glass counters, storybooks piled on executive shelves. Toys arrived, colorful ones, loud ones, ones he didn't understand, and laughter, sweet, high-pitched, genuine laughter, began to fill the once silent rooms. Lily grew fast. Her first words weren't "mama" or "dada," but "up," yelled with confidence as she raised her arms toward Ethan. Her first steps happened on the balcony, and Ethan nearly cried watching her wobble toward him, arms open, her little smile unshakable. Her laugh became his favorite sound, and her hugs the most treasured gift. Ethan no longer lived out of suitcases and private jets. He stayed home more, working remotely, often with Lily napping on his chest. His colleagues noticed the change. So did the media. One magazine cover showed him in a hoodie, holding a sippy cup titled "The Billionaire Dad." But Ethan didn't care about headlines anymore. Lily called him Daddy, and that word meant more than all the business titles he'd ever held. They baked cookies every Sunday, usually burning half the batch, but eating them anyway with giggles and chocolate on their cheeks. They danced in the living room to old jazz records, Lily twirling in mismatched socks while Ethan clapped along. At night, she demanded 3 bedtime stories, not one, and Ethan, who once dreaded public speaking, found himself doing funny voices, even singing lullabies off-key just to see her smile. Their bond was unbreakable. He celebrated every tiny milestone: the first time she counted to 10, the first time she drew a lopsided stick figure and proudly said, "That's us." Her drawings covered his office walls. Where stock charts once hung, now there were crayon hearts, messy rainbows, and a picture of a tall man with a tie and a little girl holding his hand. On her 4th birthday, Ethan planned a small party, inviting just a few close friends and their kids. No paparazzi, no extravagance. Just balloons, cake, and Lily beaming with a crown made of paper and glue. She told everyone proudly, "My daddy saved me," and Ethan's eyes welled up. That night, long after the guests had left, Lily sat on his lap by the fireplace and whispered, "Are you happy, Daddy?" He hugged her tighter, more than I ever thought I could be. Their life wasn't perfect. There were tantrums and messes, early fevers and doctor visits. But Ethan had never felt more whole. He began to measure success not by profit margins, but by bedtime smiles. The emptiness he once carried, the silent ache he never spoke of, had quietly disappeared. It was Lily who filled it. She didn't just change his life, she gave it meaning. By the time she turned 5, Lily was a force of sunshine, curious, Clever, endlessly kind. She made friends easily, helped strangers, and always shared her toys, even the ones she loved most. Teachers called her gifted, neighbors adored her, but to Ethan, none of that mattered as much as the way she still ran to him every evening yelling, "Daddy," as if he were the best part of her day. And maybe, just maybe, he was. Life had become rich in the ways that couldn't be measured. His home wasn't just a structure anymore. It pulsed with warmth, with giggles echoing through the halls and tiny footprints on polished floors. Ethan often sat in silence, watching her sleep, her tiny hands curled, her breathing soft. In those moments, he'd think about how a single cry on a cold night had rewritten everything he thought he knew about life. He had given her a home, but she had given him a heart. The mansion was glowing with soft golden lights. Balloons floated gently in the entryway, and the scent of fresh vanilla cake filled the air. Laughter echoed from the backyard as children played under the string lights, their shoes wet from a recent drizzle that had just started to clear. Ethan stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, arranging cupcakes on a tray while Lily ran around in a sparkly dress, her crown slightly crooked, her cheeks red from excitement. It was a perfect evening, or so it seemed. Just as the doorbell rang, a yellow taxi rolled quietly up the long driveway, unusual against the line of luxury cars parked for the party. The driver stepped out slowly, his coat damp, his boots splashing softly on the stone walkway. He was older, rugged, eyes shadowed with years of fatigue and something more, urgency. "I need to speak with Mr. Cole," he said to the housekeeper at the door. "It's personal. Very." Ethan, alerted by the commotion, stepped into the foyer, wiping frosting from his fingers with a napkin. He glanced at the man, puzzled. "Can I help you?" The driver hesitated, removed his cap, and nodded. "My name's Marco. I was there, the night you found her." Time stopped for a moment. Ethan's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Marco looked around and lowered his voice. "The baby in the box. 5 years ago. I know who left her." Ethan felt the floor shift beneath him, his breath caught as he ushered Marco into his study, away from the noise of children and music. Inside the quiet room, Marco's voice trembled but was steady enough to speak truth. "That night, I was parked outside that alley, taking a break between rides. It was raining hard. I saw a young woman, no older than 20, running through the street like she was being hunted. She had a baby in her arms, wrapped in nothing but an old towel. She looked terrified, desperate. I rolled down my window, asked if she needed help. She begged me not to call anyone, told me she had no choice, that she had to leave the baby where someone would find her, or he'd kill them both." Ethan stared, his hands clenched into fists. "Who was after her?" Marco exhaled, eyes dark. "A man named Victor Basso. Big name in underground circles, dangerous, violent. She'd been trapped with him for 2 years. When she found out she was pregnant, she tried to run. He caught her once, beat her. When the baby was born, she knew he'd never let it live, said it was a weakness. So she planned one escape, the only one she could manage." Ethan sat down slowly, his mind racing. "Why now? Why are you telling me this today?" Marco leaned forward. "Because Victor's been arrested. Trafficking, weapons, the whole deal. He's in prison. And the girl, Elena, that's her name. She came to me last month. Said she's been trying to find the baby she left behind. She searched hospitals, shelters, police reports. Nothing. But then she found an old news article about a billionaire who adopted a baby girl found in a box. She knew. She knew it had to be her daughter." The air in the room thickened. Ethan rubbed his temples, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you say something before?" Marco looked down. "She made me promise. She was so scared. And I didn't know what kind of man you were. I thought maybe the girl would be better off never knowing. But now, Elena's safe. And she deserves to know her child is alive. And loved." Ethan stood, walking toward the window, his reflection pale in the glass. Outside, Lily danced with her friends, laughing under the lights, completely unaware that the story of her beginning was unfolding just feet away. Marco pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. A photo. Blurry, old, but unmistakable. A young woman holding a newborn, her eyes swollen from crying, but her arms wrapped tightly around the child. This is her. Elena. She's not looking to take Lily away. She just wants to see her. Just once. To know she did the right thing. Ethan stared at the photo, heart thudding. For 5 years, he had been Lily's world, and now, someone from the shadows of the past was reaching out, not to destroy, but to complete a circle that had never been closed. The weight of it all set it heavy on his chest. Not fear, not anger, but the quiet stir of fate, reminding him that even the most carefully built lives rest on stories we don't always control. The following days were silent and slow inside the mansion. The party decorations had come down, but a strange stillness remained, as if the house was holding its breath. Ethan stood by the window often, watching Lily as she played in the garden, unaware of the storm gently forming around her. He hadn't told her yet. How could he? She was just a child, full of light, skipping barefoot through flowers, her laughter mixing with the wind. And yet, just beyond that innocence, a woman waited. Elena. She arrived one grey morning, stepping carefully out of a rideshare car in a borrowed coat, holding nothing but a purse and hope. Her eyes scanned the house, wide with disbelief, pain, and awe. The moment she saw Lily, her breath caught in her throat. The little girl was twirling with a red ribbon in her hand, chasing butterflies near the hedges. Elena gripped the iron gate and slowly sank to her knees. Her lips trembled. Tears rolled down her face, not loud, not dramatic, but quiet and aching, as if 5 years of grief were dissolving all at once. Ethan stood nearby, watching. He didn't rush to her. He gave her space, unsure how to begin, knowing no words would ever be enough. After some time, he approached and offered her a seat on the porch bench. She took it, wiping her cheeks quickly, embarrassed by her collapse. "She's so happy," she whispered. "I didn't expect this. I only wanted to know she was alive. I didn't think you'd love her like this." Ethan's voice was low, steady. "She saved me too. I thought I was rescuing her, but she changed everything in me." Elena nodded, her eyes never leaving the child. "I don't want to disrupt her life. I'm not here to take her away." There was a silence between them, thick with emotion, but strangely peaceful. Later that day, Ethan gently called Lily inside. She bounced into the living room, red cheeks glowing, holding a daisy she had picked. "Daddy, who's that?" she asked curiously, peeking behind him at Elena. Ethan knelt beside her, his hands resting on her small shoulders. Elena sat across from them, eyes shining, hands clasped tightly. He spoke softly, measuring each word like a thread in delicate fabric. "Sweetheart, this lady's name is Elena. She's someone very special. A long time ago she helped make sure you'd be safe. She's been looking for you ever since. Not to change anything, just to meet you." Lily blinked, puzzled but calm. She looked at Elena, then at Ethan. "Like an angel." Ethan smiled gently. "Something like that." Lily walked toward Elena slowly, clutching her daisy. She stopped right in front of her and tilted her head. "Did you cry when you left me?" Elena nodded, lips quivering. "Every day." Without hesitation, Lily handed her the daisy and hugged her legs. It was small, simple, and pure. No questions, no drama. Just instinct, a child's understanding of love. Elena bent down and wrapped her arms around her, crying silently into her little shoulder. Ethan watched, his throat tight, feeling something shift inside him again, another wall quietly falling. That evening, the three of them sat around the dinner table, the awkwardness melting into warmth. Lily told silly jokes and demanded dessert before dinner. Elena laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. As night fell, Ethan and Elena sat on the balcony while Lily painted with watercolors inside. "What now?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan looked toward the city lights in the distance. Now, we give her more love than she ever thought possible. No confusion, no competition, just one family, however strange it looks to the world. And so they did. Days turned into weeks. Elena didn't move in, but she became part of their world, helping with school pickups, reading bedtime stories on Wednesdays, bringing homemade muffins every Sunday morning. Lily never questioned it. To her, it was simple. More love was always welcome. The world outside remained loud and complicated. But inside that home, peace blossomed. Photos began to appear on the walls, one of Lily on Ethan's shoulders, one of her hugging Elena in the garden, and finally, one of all three of them under a tree, laughing without posing, as if nothing else mattered. Because in the end, nothing else did. They weren't bound by blood or law or appearances. They were bound by the choices they made in the quiet moments. The choice to protect, to forgive, to let go of fear, and to open their hearts again. And that was enough. In a world full of broken stories, theirs had found a second chance. Not perfect, but true.